Bethesda finally did it. Not only have they given us updates on the development of the Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5, but they've also confirmed the heavily rumored Fallout 3 and New Vegas Remasters, the new Obsidian Fallout game, and so much more. This was all announced in a lengthy note from Bethesda Game Studios across their socials, going over their entire short-term and long-term roadmap, including their objective to get games into our hands sooner and support them for longer. It's the kind of transparency we've never seen from BGS, and I think you can all guess as to why. Now, considering it's been over 14 years since Skyrim, it's probably for the best that I start with reassuring you that the Elder Scrolls 6 still remains their primary development focus, with the majority of the team still working on it. They noted that with over 65 million copies sold, players are still exploring Skyrim 15 years later, but they know it's been a very long wait for the sequel. The next chapter is on the way, they're where they plan to be, loving how it looks, and playing it every day. Now, while BGS claims they're where they plan to be on the development of the Elder Scrolls 6, I do still imagine that the game has slipped at least a little bit in the roadmap, as otherwise it should be releasing next year, based on how things have landed previously with the FTC roadmap leak. But as we'll be getting into a little bit later in this video, I just think 2027 is a bit too packed for BGS to realistically expect the Elder Scrolls 6 from them next year. So I'm very much in agreement with the likes of Jason Schreier that is looking more like a 2028 or beyond release window, as shitty as that sounds. But they also announced something that could have a notable impact on that, as well as the future development of the Elder Scrolls games. As with Bethesda Game Studios' newly announced collaboration efforts with studios under Bethesda, ZeniMax Online Studios, the studio behind the Elder Scrolls Online, will now be collaborating with BGS on the future of the franchise, while still continuing their support for ESO, which I actually think could have major implications for the future of the franchise, as ZeniMax Online Studios knows the Elder Scrolls inside and out. In fact, they might even know it better than BGS themselves at this point. The team over at ZOS, at least those still left after the major layoffs, are extremely talented. So I look forward to seeing what sort of value they can bring to the table for future releases, whether it's a deeper understanding of the lore, speeding up development, or just improving the overall quality of future games. Fallout 5, on the other hand, is in pre-production. Keep in mind, pre-production is a more lengthy part of their development cycle, as they noted on their socials, and it actually entered this phase quite a bit before this announcement. But they stated that Fallout is one of their biggest priorities today, and while Fallout 5 remains their long-range destination, they have multiple Fallout projects in active development right now. That being said, due to BGS's development timeline, Fallout 5 is still several years away and won't even be their primary focus until after the release of the Elder Scrolls 6. The good news is that it shouldn't be stuck in development for quite as long as the Elder Scrolls 6, as the foundations with the engine have already been laid out, something that wasn't the case for Starfield or the Elder Scrolls 6, as they've confirmed that both games are being developed on Creation Engine 3, the next iteration of their in-house engine. It's what they're calling a shared technology platform, which they've been building since Starfield's launch, noting that it will allow their teams to support multiple projects simultaneously with new tools, rendering, and systems that help define their games. Now, this isn't necessarily news to us. It was previously confirmed that the Elder Scrolls 6 started development on Creation Engine 2, but they upgraded to the third iteration mid-development, as noted by Todd Howard. But it's still nice to get some reassurance on their confidence with this new iteration of their engine. Of course, with both games being on Creation Engine 3, that means mod tools are pretty much a given. That being said, Fallout 5 isn't even the next Fallout game, as BGS have announced even further studio collaborations in order to increase the outputs of Fallout and the Elder Scrolls, confirming the rumors that yes, Obsidian Entertainment, creators of Fallout New Vegas, are working with Bethesda Game Studios on a new Fallout project. And while this is bittersweet due to the project cancellations and layoffs that came with it at Obsidian, this is something that I and many others have been wanting ever since Fallout New Vegas released in 2010. And while the team at Obsidian has obviously changed dramatically since those days, there are still some major key players from New Vegas, and while I know this is sort of a hot take these days, I think Obsidian is just a talented team in general, whether you like their recent games or not. As in my opinion, the major thing holding them back has always been dealing with a restricted budget and scope, all while trying to build up their own IP. So I honestly think they'll thrive working on a proven IP with a more sizable budget to go along with it. And beyond just their capabilities, I think it's also important that I squash the idea that Obsidian doesn't want to work on a Fallout, as this is a notion I'm seeing a lot lately, and it all seems to stem from this singular PC Gamer article, which is understandable as it has quite a bit of a misleading headline. As Obsidian's VP stated, I am sure they were more than happy working on their own projects, and I can't imagine that they're very happy about their active projects being canceled. But that is very different from we don't want to work on Fallout. It was just a few years ago that Fergus Urquhart's Obsidian CEO himself clearly stated that if they ever got the opportunity to make another Fallout game, they'd make it. There's not even a question of whether or not they would do it, it's just, will the opportunity arise? In fact, according to Jez Gordon at Windows Central, Obsidian had been building a prototype on the side for as long as 2 years, pending collaboration with Bethesda. This project, which was not officially Fallout by name, was very Fallout-y in nature, to the point where there were debates at the upper levels of Xbox Game Studios about whether or not it should be made in Unreal or Creation Engine. He went on to claim that Todd Howard wanted to be involved in any potential formal Obsidian-Bethesda collaboration on the IP, and that it wasn't possible at the time due to the various ongoing commitments to the Fallout TV show, Elder Scrolls VI, Starfield, and Indiana Jones. So whether that prototype was actually a part of a Fallout pitch or not, I think either way the desire has been there at Obsidian to work on another Fallout game, just not the opportunity to do so. And I don't imagine most of the team at Obsidian are sitting there upset about getting to work on Fallout. Just more so that it came at the cost of their active and more personal projects. That being said, considering this new Fallout project is just starting development now, despite Obsidian's development timeline often being quite a bit quicker than Bethesda Game Studios, this game will still be a number of years away, but I do imagine the intention with this project is to shorten the gap to the next Fallout game, as Fallout 5 will undoubtedly take even longer. Now, one thing to emphasize about this new Fallout project is that it's sounding like Bethesda Game Studios will be far more hands-on with this game than they were back in the New Vegas days. Which is important to emphasize, as I think it will greatly influence the likelihood of this project using Creation Engine 3. As while I was previously worried about the use of Unreal Engine 5 due to Obsidian's familiarity with the engine, I just think that Bethesda Game Studios being hands-on, the details on Creation Engine 3, the paid creation system, mod support, Fallout 5 cross-development benefits, and series continuity in general, I think it makes the most sense for them to deal with the short-term pain of Obsidian getting familiar with Creation Engine than to just use the tool that would give them a short-sighted benefit. And there's plenty more reason why I think they'll opt for Creation Engine over Unreal, but we'll go ahead and save those discussions for another day, as there is even more Fallout games coming. As it's finally official, Bethesda has been working on remasters for both Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, and while they're not announcing any dates today, as someone who grew up on these games, got into the genre because of these games, got into PC because of these games, and created this YouTube channel nearly 14 years ago because of these games, I am extremely excited despite my many reservations. And while we already knew Fallout 3 was without a doubt coming thanks to the FTC roadmap leak from several years ago, New Vegas was a bit more of an uncertainty. And as Bethesda clarified, these projects have been in the works for years, so it's not like they're 4+ years out. In fact, Fallout 3 Remastered might actually be coming sooner than you might think. As well, they announced that they will not be hosting a traditional Fallout broadcast this year. They're already planning something special for Fallout's 30th anniversary in 2027, when Fallout Day will be celebrated live in Washington, D.C. Not exactly the most subtle hint for when we can expect to see Fallout 3 Remastered. It also lines up with the leaked roadmap, adjusted for the known delays. So I think October 23rd, 2027 is a pretty safe bet for when we'll hear more. As for my reservations for these remasters, I won't get too into it in this video, but Oblivion Remastered, to put it bluntly, left me with quite a bit of disappointment. As well, I thought the improved visuals and mechanics were great. It honestly felt like a remake in some regards. It using the Frankenstein combination of the Oblivion engine and Unreal came at the expense of performance and stability. It has also very clearly resulted in issues when it comes to updating and maintaining the game. And that's ignoring the side effect of not being able to bring full modding support that we've come to expect with BGS games. As well, Oblivion Remastered is very much moddable on PC with plenty of mods available, it's just objectively not to the extent we've come to expect. So if they're planning to use the same solution for Fallout 3 and New Vegas, it kind of kills my excitement for these projects, no matter how much these games mean to me. Despite how much more work it would be and the fact that it would delay the launch even further, I'd much rather see these projects evolve into full remakes using Creation Engine 3. Not only would it be far more performant, stable, and visually coherent, something that feels really bizarre to say about Creation Engine, but it would also make it far easier to update and maintain the games, with full mod support, paid creations, and improved longevity as just an added bonus. Now, these remasters also stir up another question, that being, how will this affect the Fallout 4 New Vegas and Fallout 4 Capital Wasteland mod projects? Which, for those of you that don't know, are remake mods for New Vegas and Fallout 3 using the Fallout 4 Creation Engine, which have both been in development for nearly a full decade at this point. And well, as of right now, both teams have already come out and stated that this announcement doesn't change their plans to continue development on their mods, with the Fallout 4 Capital Wasteland team noting that they'll have even more to share in the future. And considering how Oblivion Remastered has gone, I am glad they plan to continue development, as I for one am still looking forward to Sky Oblivion for that very reason. Now, going back on topic, there is something else we'll definitely be seeing at Fallout Day 2027, if it's not already out by then, that being Fallout 76's next major expansion, planned for next year, called Raven Rock, which will be a prequel story to Fallout 3. Now, depending on how they go about this could easily be the best expansion for the game yet, and the one that gets me to dive back into the deep end of Fallout 76. I'm a huge fan of Fallout 3. It's the game that got me into the franchise in open world games, so I'm quite optimistic about this expansion. In fact, I'll definitely be covering it as we hear more, which is saying a lot for me, as I haven't done a whole lot of Fallout 76 coverage here on the channel. And before we go ahead and dive into what the future holds for Starfield, there is a bit more Fallout-related announcements that we should run through, as they have confirmed that Fallout Shelter will continue receiving new content and seasons. The previously announced unscripted Fallout Shelter television project is also still in the works with their partners at Amazon Studios and Kilter Films, the same studio behind the Fallout TV show, which, yes, Fallout Season 3's production is well underway. So with all the future new projects to look forward to, what about Starfield? Well, despite many thinking the contrary, they're actually not abandoning the game as of yet. In fact, new stories, gameplay improvements, and additional updates are apparently on the way, all in preparation for new Starborn content next year, which refers to the new Starborn DLC, which they had trademarked last year. And while I myself might not exactly be the biggest Starfield fan, I still think it's incredibly important that Bethesda follow through with their promises for this game, considering there have been over 17 million players during the lifetime of this game, which is not sales, just to clarify. But it's important to emphasize that while it's not as big as Fallout or the Elder Scrolls, which are giants, Starfield still saw success and has a notable amount of fans. So to those people, since there are major updates coming for Starfield, if you have any mods installed that depend on Starfield script extender and address library, I would highly recommend that you go ahead and block updates on Steam if you haven't already. I actually have a tutorial on how to block Steam updates on my channel, so for anyone that needs it, it should be linked down in the description below, as well as on screen now. Beyond the announcements, we also got some interesting stats and updates for creations, such as the fact that more than 40% of players already customize their experience through creations. It's not exactly certain as to whether this is only referring to Starfield or creations as a whole. It also doesn't signify to what extent do they keep the content installed, and whether it includes creation content that's bundled with Skyrim and Fallout 4, that is, if they're included in the stat. And beyond Starfield, they noted that creators have already earned more than $10 million in royalties from their work through the Verified Creator Program, which might not sound like a whole lot considering Nexus Mods has paid out over $17 million in donation points since 2018. But when you consider that Nexus Mods supports far more than BGS games, only offers free mods, and there are a lot more mods available for all games, that becomes a bit of a dishonest comparison. So to put it in context of just how much creations benefits Bethesda, mod authors receive a roughly 37.5% from creations, according to the partner agreements, which means well over $8 million has gone into the pockets of Bethesda after the take from platform holders. Of course, that is just a rough estimate, so keep that in mind. But considering Bethesda used to make exactly $0 directly from mod support and only saw indirect benefit from people buying their games for the mod supports, I'd say that's a huge win for Bethesda. It's also probably a good thing that creating mod tools now has a tangible financial benefit, as otherwise it could have been something on the chopping block over at Xbox. All of that said, I'd love to know your thoughts on all this news down in the comments, as I am obviously selfishly excited for the future of Fallout and the Elder Scrolls after these announcements. These are my favorite franchises, seeing a major boost in resources, which is not only good for me as a gamer, but also as someone who makes videos on these games. So I would be lying if I said otherwise. But I also acknowledge that the timing of these announcements isn't just a coincidence. Bethesda Game Studios, the studio known for refusing to ever talk about their future projects, didn't just spontaneously decide to open up, especially to the point of Todd Howard posting on Reddit. The timing makes it painfully obvious that this was purely for positive press after the Xbox reset the other week, which came with 1,600 layoffs across Xbox, 1,600 more planned over the next year, a goodbye to Undead Labs, Compulsion Games, Double Fine Productions, and Arcane Studios. In fact, we've seen game cancellations at both Obsidian Entertainment and ZeniMax Online Studios, as well as several hundred laid off across Bethesda Game Studios, Obsidian, and ZeniMax alone, which makes you question if they can even effectively pull all of this off. So despite my excitement for the future, I also feel for the developers that got laid off, or had their art squashed in the process. My only hope is that, at the very least, this gives more job security and studio stability under Xbox for these teams moving forward, as some sense of stability is something the studios at Xbox desperately need. And while I plan on diving a bit deeper into some of these subjects in future videos, especially with coverage for any new info that drops, that is it for this video. Thanks as always for watching, and until next time, this is Apoqsi, signing off.